He held my hand through my parents' funeral. I thought it was love, but the moment the last condolence was said, he whispered, "You inherited everything. Sign it over, or we're done." Please stay with me as I tell you my story, and please do not forget to support our channel by subscribing, liking, and sharing with your loved ones. I had just lost both of my parents in a terrible car accident. One moment they were alive, and the next, they were gone forever. Everything felt heavy and dark. I could barely eat or sleep. The house felt too quiet, and every room reminded me of them. I moved through the days like a shadow, not really thinking, just trying to breathe. My husband Jack stayed by my side. At first, he seemed to care. He brought me tea, sat beside me in silence, and held my hand at the funeral. But even then, something felt off. His eyes didn't hold the same sadness. They were colder, more focused. Not long after the funeral, Jack started asking questions, not about how I was feeling or how I was coping with the loss. Instead, he talked about the business, my father's company. My parents had left everything to me, and now I was the sole owner of a company worth $250 million. Jack didn't even try to hide his interest. He said things like, "It's a lot to handle alone," and "Your dad would want me to help." I didn't know what to say. My mind was still full of grief. I hadn't even looked at the paperwork. I didn't care about the company right then. I just wanted my parents back. But Jack kept bringing it up, again and again. It felt like he was waiting for the right moment to get me to hand it over. He smiled when he spoke, but his words felt sharp. I started to feel like I was being watched, like every move I made was being judged. When I sat alone in the living room, looking at old photos, Jack would walk in and mention meetings and shares. When I cried quietly in bed, he would talk about signing documents. It hurt. I had always believed Jack loved me. We had been married for 3 years. He had promised to stand by me through everything. But now, when I needed comfort the most, all he seemed to care about was the money. I began to feel more alone than ever. The people who had loved me the most were gone, and the one person who should have protected me was looking at me like I was a tool. I stopped talking much. I kept to myself, trying to understand what was happening. My heart was already broken from losing my parents, and now something else was breaking inside me too. A quiet fear that maybe Jack had never really loved me at all. And in that silence, surrounded by loss, I started to see the truth. The man I married was not the man I thought he was. After some time passed, I started noticing things I hadn't seen before. Jack wasn't the same. He didn't sit close to me anymore. At night, he stopped lying next to me in bed. He would go to the guest room without saying anything. I didn't ask at first. I thought maybe he was tired or needed space. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. He avoided looking at me. When I tried to talk, he nodded, but didn't really listen. I cried quietly sometimes, hoping he would reach out and hold me. But he just walked by, as if he didn't see me at all. I felt invisible in my own home. I asked him if we could speak to someone together, someone who might help us understand what was happening between us. I thought maybe, just maybe, we could fix things. But he didn't even look up from his phone. He said, "That's not what we need right now. Just take care of the documents." His voice was cold, not angry, just empty, like all the warmth had been taken out of it. I didn't push him after that. I stopped asking questions. I didn't want to hear more answers like that. It was worse than shouting or arguing. It was nothing. I began to feel like I was the only one still trying. In the mornings, he left early. At night, he came back late. Sometimes he didn't come home at all. I didn't know where he was going, and I was too tired to ask. I sat alone in the kitchen, making dinner for one, and throwing away what I couldn't eat. I remembered the way he used to laugh, the way he used to call my name like it meant something to him. All of that had disappeared, not suddenly, but slowly, quietly, like a light going out, bit by bit. I would catch myself staring at the empty side of the bed. I wondered if he even remembered the promises we made. I tried to remember the last time he looked at me with love, but I couldn't. My world had changed so much in such a short time. First, I lost my parents. Then, without warning, I began to lose my husband, not in a crash, not in a moment, but in silence. There were no fights, no big scenes, just a growing distance that filled the space between us like fog. I missed him, even though he was still there. And maybe that was the worst part. He was right there, but I had never felt so far from him. I used to believe we were strong together, that we could get through anything. But now, I wasn't sure we were even together at all. He was slipping away, and I didn't know how to hold on. I lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering when things had started to fall apart. Maybe they had been falling for a while, and I was just too hurt to notice. But now I saw it clearly. I was losing him, and I didn't know if he was ever coming back. One afternoon, I went to the study to look for a photo album. While searching through some drawers, I found a folder with recent papers. At the top, I saw a familiar name, my father's lawyer. My heart sank. I hadn't spoken to him since the funeral, but the documents showed that Jack had. I sat down and read everything slowly. There were meeting notes, messages, even a letter. Jack had been talking to the lawyer without telling me. They weren't just casual talks. He had asked about the ownership of the company, about how much control I really had. He even asked about changing some parts of the will. My hands began to shake. When I asked Jack about it later, he didn't seem surprised. He said my father had already talked to him about the business and that this was all part of the plan. But I knew my father. He didn't trust Jack with company matters. He had always kept those things private. I remembered clearly. He once told me to be careful with who I let near the business. Still, Jack stood there like nothing was wrong. He smiled a little, like I was overreacting. He said I was stressed and confused, that I wasn't thinking clearly. But deep down, I knew the truth was coming to the surface. Later that night, I went through my father's old emails, hoping to find something. What I found broke me more. A message from one of his close friends mentioned Jack's visit just weeks before the accident. My father hadn't told me, but the email made it clear. Jack had tried to get my parents to change the company ownership, using kind words and fake concern. My father didn't fall for it. He wrote back saying the company would always stay in my hands. Now everything made sense. Jack had started this long before my parents died. He had been planning, acting kind, staying close, all while thinking of what he could gain. I felt sick. It wasn't just distance anymore. It was lies. And not just small ones. Deep, careful lies. Lies that began even before my loss. I wasn't just alone. I had been fooled. And now, I had to decide what to do next. I waited a few days before speaking to him again. My mind was full, but my voice was calm. I had to say it. I told him I wasn't signing anything. I said I wasn't handing over control of what my parents had built. My answer was clear. He didn't yell. He didn't ask why. He didn't even look surprised. He just stood there, quiet for a second, then said, "Then we're done." That was it. He turned away and left the room. I heard him opening the closet in the guest room. Drawers opened. Hangers moved. I didn't follow him. I didn't speak. I stayed on the bed, hands resting on my lap, staring at nothing. He came back once just to grab a bag. His suits, shoes, shirts, gone within minutes. He didn't slam the door. He didn't say goodbye. He just walked away, like we were strangers. I didn't cry. I had no tears left. Something inside me had already gone quiet. I sat there, still and steady. There was no noise in the house, except for the faint creak of the floorboards. That night, I lay awake, not out of pain, but out of deep stillness. I stared at the ceiling and listened to the silence. He didn't come back. For the first time, I felt something shift in me. Not fear, not sorrow, but a strange kind of peace. I had said what I needed to say. I didn't beg. I didn't explain. I didn't argue. The next morning, I noticed his toothbrush was gone. So were his things from the bathroom. The closet was half empty. He had made his decision, and I had made mine. I didn't feel strong. I felt tired but firm. I wasn't proud or angry. I was just sure. I thought back to the girl I used to be, the one who trusted easily, who believed in forever. She was still in me, but quieter now. She had learned something hard. The house was quiet that day. I didn't turn on the TV or call anyone. I just made some tea and sat by the window. The sky was grey, the air still. I thought about everything I had lost, and what I might find again, not right away, but someday. And as the hours passed, I didn't miss him. I didn't wonder where he went. I just sat there, breathing in that silence, feeling a little more myself. I hadn't been to the lakehouse since everything changed. The drive there was quiet. Trees passed by like shadows, and the road felt longer than I remembered. My hands stayed tight on the wheel, but my mind was far away. I didn't know what I was looking for. I just needed to feel close to them again. When I stepped inside, the smell of old books and wood hit me. It hadn't changed. My father's chair was still by the window. My mother's favourite vase still held dried flowers. Dust covered the shelves, but the feeling of home was still there. I walked slowly through the rooms, touching the things they once touched. The quiet wasn't empty. It was full of memories. I made my way to the study. That room had always been my father's space, a place of calm, of thinking, of safety. Books lined the walls, and papers sat in neat piles. I sat in his chair and rested my hands on the desk. My fingers brushed across the drawer handles, and without really thinking, I opened one. Inside, beneath some folders, was a small envelope with my name on it. The handwriting stopped me cold. It was his. I held it gently, afraid it might disappear if I wasn't careful. I opened it slowly and began to read. His words were soft, but serious. He had written the letter weeks before the crash. He said he didn't know if he should send it, but felt I needed to know something. He had doubts about Jack, deep ones. He said he had seen things that worried him, conversations that didn't feel honest, questions that didn't seem right. He said he believed Jack didn't marry me for love, that he had other reasons. He didn't want to hurt me, but he wanted to protect me. Each sentence felt like a cut. My chest tightened. My father had seen the truth before I did. He had tried to warn me. He had trusted me to read it when I was ready. I finished the letter and sat very still. The silence in the room pressed against me. I looked around at everything my parents had touched, everything they had given me. And now, even in death, my father was still trying to keep me safe. Tears didn't fall right away. They came later, quiet and slow, not just for what I had lost, but for what had never been real in the first place. The days felt long after I came back. I spent most of my time alone. I didn't talk much. I didn't go out unless I had to. I stayed quiet, trying to understand where everything had gone wrong. One morning, I found an old notebook while cleaning a drawer. The cover was plain, the pages untouched. I picked it up without much thought and kept it by my bed. That night, I opened it and started to write. I didn't plan what to say. I just let the words come out. At first, I wrote about the days that hurt the most. I didn't worry about spelling or making sense. I wrote what I felt. Each night, I returned to the pages. I didn't tell anyone about it. This was just for me. In those quiet hours, something started to change. I wrote about my childhood, about laughter, about dreams I once had. I remembered the girl I used to be before everything got so heavy. She loved early mornings. She liked to dance when no one was watching. She believed the world was full of wonder. I had forgotten about her. With every page, I felt her returning. Not all at once, but piece by piece. I wrote about the moments that made me smile. I wrote about my mother's gentle advice, my father's quiet strength. I wrote about the way the sun used to shine through the kitchen window while we made breakfast together. The more I wrote, the more I remembered how much I had inside me, things no one could take away. Not money, not titles, not love that wasn't real. I stopped writing about him. I stopped thinking about what was lost. Instead, I started to notice the small things again, the sound of the rain, the warmth of tea, the peace in being alone without feeling lonely. The journal became a soft place to land, a space where I didn't have to pretend. It asked for nothing and gave me back parts of myself I thought were gone. I didn't read the pages once they were written. That wasn't the point. It wasn't about looking back. It was about moving forward, slowly and gently. Over time, the weight on my chest began to lift. I didn't feel fixed, but I didn't feel broken either. I felt real. I felt me. And every night before turning off the light, I would write a little more until I started to feel whole again. The office felt cold that morning. I stood by the window, watching people arrive below. My hands felt heavy, but my mind was clear. I had made my choice. It was time to speak, to stand in the space my parents once stood, and claim what was already mine. I walked into the meeting room slowly. Faces turned to me, some surprised, others unsure. These were the people who had worked with my parents for years. I saw the doubt in their eyes, but I also saw hope. They were waiting. I took a deep breath and spoke. My voice shook at first, but I didn't stop. I told them I was stepping in, fully. I said the company would move forward with me at the lead. There were no big promises, no strong speeches, just truth, simple and honest. Some nodded, some whispered, but no one spoke out loud. I had expected that. I kept going. Halfway through, the door opened fast. He walked in, loud and angry. His words came quickly, sharp and full of demand. He spoke of rights, of promises, of what he believed he deserved. The room went quiet. All eyes turned to me. I didn't rise. I didn't flinch. I looked at him, and for the first time, I felt nothing. Not fear, not anger, just understanding. I saw him clearly now. He asked again, louder this time, about what he claimed was his. I looked around the room, then back at him. I spoke 3 words. That was all I needed to say. His face changed. He stood still for a moment, then walked out. The door closed behind him, and the air felt lighter. The room stayed silent. I gave a small nod, stood up, and walked out slowly. I didn't say anything more. I had said enough. Outside, the hallway felt brighter. I stopped for a second and looked at a photo hanging on the wall. It was my parents, smiling, proud. I touched the frame lightly and walked on. That day, I didn't just speak for the company. I spoke for myself, for the girl who had been quiet too long, for the daughter who had finally stepped into the light. No more hiding, no more waiting. I had found my voice, and I had used it. The sky was soft and grey the morning I met my lawyer. We didn't speak much as we sat down together. The paperwork was ready. Everything had been checked twice. All that was left was the moment itself. I didn't feel nervous. I didn't feel sad either. I just wanted peace. I had already lost enough. There was no reason to make more noise. I didn't need to shout to be heard. He arrived a little late, dressed like always, like nothing had changed. He looked around the room, waiting for a reaction. I gave him none. He sat down across from me, calm on the outside, but I could see the questions in his eyes. My lawyer handed him a folder. He opened it slowly, and as he read through the pages, I watched his face. There was a pause, then a shift. He realized what it meant. Everything between us would be finished with those papers. There was no offer, no share, no deal, just an end. He glanced at me, confused at first, then cold, but I didn't look away. I met his eyes and held them for a second, not out of anger, not out of pride, but because I had nothing left to hide. He had believed he held power over me, that I needed him, that I would bend to keep things quiet, to keep things whole. But he was wrong. I didn't need revenge. I just needed distance. He signed the papers, his hand tight around the pen. He didn't speak. Neither did I. When it was done, he stood up, straightened his jacket, and left. No goodbye. No parting words. Just a door closing softly behind him. I stayed in my seat for a while. My lawyer asked if I was okay. I nodded. I was more than okay. I was free. Walking outside, the air felt lighter. The streets looked the same, but I didn't. I had chosen a quiet path, not because I was weak, but because I was finally strong. I hadn't fought to win. I had walked away to heal. He once thought I couldn't live without him, but I already was, every single day. And now, he was no longer part of my story, just a chapter I had closed, with calm hands and a clear heart. The most important lesson I learned is to believe in myself. Life can bring hard times and people who try to take what is yours. But your true value does not come from others. It comes from inside you. It's okay to feel lost or hurt, but never forget to find your own strength again. Sometimes the hardest part is standing up and saying, "This is mine. This is who I am." Trust the people who truly care about you and protect what they have given you with respect and love. At the end of the day, only you can decide how much you are worth. Never let anyone make you feel less than you are. When you know your worth, you carry peace and confidence with you. It is also important to take time to heal. Healing helps you grow back stronger and ready for what comes next. Finally, remember that moving forward is the best way to honor the people who believed in you. Keep their memory alive by living well and standing tall. In life, no one can take your true self away. That is yours forever. Do you think I made the right choice by standing up for myself and moving on, or should I have tried harder to save what was lost? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Your opinion means a lot to me. And if you want to hear more stories about strength and finding yourself, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new video.